We started this area a little over a year ago, and this has actually been a lot of work to get to this state right now. There was a guy I found lives in this area. He was working on this area, so it's pretty clean. He pulled a lot of it. He was cutting it and pulling it, and he's got quite a bit of this area under control. I'm not a fan of pulling things at all because this has some very high quality native habitat and structure that you really have to be careful with. You're better off just taking your time and conserving that. If you pull it up, you don't know what you're pulling up. It's very damaging. So what we started doing later was cutting these down. Through this area here, the path itself, you walk through here, it was 6-7 feet on the side. It was a wall and you had no sight lines. So there was a substantial amount of buckthorn and honeysuckle that was taken out of here. Honeysuckle not so much. It was a thicket that someone had come through and cut down the larger buckthorn in here that were canopying, and then it walked away 8 years later. It was a complete thicket. But how we addressed this is we repeatedly cut it down. The bigger stuff we had to deal with quite a bit, and first, just to be able to do that, some of them were like 2 inches or less in diameter. Quite a few of those we cut to the ground and killed them. And after that, once we got to the point where we really couldn't cut much more bigger stuff, we came through and just started cutting down the tops off of quite a few of these to open up the canopy and get some control into this area. And what we found is we cut down as much as we could, and half of it died the next winter. It was gone, you could tell. And also there's things like this that are just really wimpy. A couple shoots that are starting to regenerate, and those need to be taken care of. But it took a while to come back. We had some dry conditions, we've had some rain, and you can see where they do start flushing back. You could strip those, cut them down, strip those, and go into the winter. And you'd probably kill most of them if you had the time to do that. We're gonna go through this whole area and we're gonna cut everything down again, depending on what it is, some of the smaller stuff, and strip a few of these little ones. Like right here, there's just a couple of these. We'll just quickly strip them, take these leaves off, and let it be, and come visit them again in the next year. But if it's a little bit bigger, we'll deal with them a little bit more aggressively. But this area was just packed thicket of buckthorn, and there's some things along the edges here, quite a bit of decent native structure, little pockets in there, but it did choke out quite a bit. And this was a substantial amount of time. We spent quite a bit of time in this area, taking this area back. This park area is relatively clean for invasives compared to other areas which are wastelands, and we're still working on it. We still have quite a bit of buckthorn that's mixed in there. They're all small, an inch or less, maybe 6-7 feet tall, and quite a few of those. But you start cutting those down to the ground, you really start making some headway. And about 2 weeks ago we came through here and really cleaned out this area. They get mixed in here with the choke cherries. You gotta find them later in the fall. But as you can see through here, we cut down hundreds of those small ones throughout here. It was very quick. It really didn't take that long. Once we were opening up roadways to access, and we could work both ends, we covered thousands of square feet relatively quickly. And on that edge, this area was done last fall, about a year ago. Haven't really done anything with it. Things are starting to grow, and it's been cleaned up. Sightlines are where they see that light back there. That's like an open park area. That was just a thicket, a wall of buckthorn, which is typical along the edges. That was cleaned out, and not a whole lot coming back. But in the middle there's a lot of smaller things that we just cut down and didn't address them properly. So we're gonna have to deal with them again, but we'll cut those down and go from there. And along the edges there, a little farther down, really real thickets. We cut down this recently this year. We cut down hundreds and hundreds of just pretty good sized buckthorn thicket. Everything was an inch, inch and a half tall. Quite a few of them were 15 feet tall. Those we just chopped and dropped. We haven't even dealt with that. That's the wasteland. We'll have to pile that. But this area is coming along pretty well. And this is where we started out. Somebody that works with me want to do an experiment on the effectiveness of stripping buckthorn and no herbicide, and see where we go from there. And she has some success. Through here you can see a lot of little sticks that are in there, and quite a few died just by stripping them. We cut them in half and then strip them as they popped up once or twice, and nothing's really been done this year except for early in the year, and some of them are starting to pop back. You could strip those and they'd all be dead, and I don't know if you can get a visual here of how many there are in here. There's one every square foot or more, and saying that it was very effective cutting them down and stripping them. Half of them, if not more, didn't survive the winter, and then they got stripped a little bit and half of those died. Now we're about a 25% rate. We're going to do this, we're going to cut through this ground, just deal with them and be done with them. But if you have an area that you just are opposed to chemical, you can strip these things down. We've stripped down, cut the canopies off of like 3-inch caliper, pretty good size ones, and then just stripped them and had pretty good luck. We've also found that in the fall, if you cut like late in the fall, you cut the canopy off, and then by the time the days start shortening and they're trying to recover, but they're saving energy for the winter, is you'll get quite a bit of kill at that time. If you do that like in the beginning of spring or late, they're going to pop back and grow very vigorously. But the late season, if you really injure them like that, they try to get some strength to recover, and then they're trying to save for the winter. Is quite often that's very stressful to these plants. It's really a matter of timing on cutting them down and stripping them. Your better bet is do it later in the year, and then don't let them flush out, and then early in the spring cut them down again, and then maybe midsummer, and then in the fall finish them up. It's quite a process versus any kind of chemical approach, but it can work. And you're not going to be able to cover a whole lot of area doing that, but it's effective. We've actually included that in the technique. Is we'll cut them down and then see what will die, and keep cutting them down, and then ultimately you have to go through and just finish the job. But we found that substantial amount will die that way. But again, it's a matter of timing. You want to do it late in the summer before fall, just before fall, and maybe even like in the fall, and then they won't have much time to survive the winter, regroup, and you're going to get substantial kill. So if you want to just keep cutting them down, you could do that. Now you're better off with the hedge clippers if you can. Just keep chopping them, weakening them. You can cover quite a good bit of ground with that. But it gets to a stage when you have acres and acres and acres, you just have to finish them up. Otherwise, you're not addressing other acreage that you need to address and open up. In this area here, we will come back through this fall and get all these small ones that are in there, and we'll let it sit again for a year and fill it out. So we don't do a real thorough job. Quite often we'll let them grow a little bit, come back a year later. And I'm not a fan of pulling, because this one has some very, very high quality native structure, and I really don't want to be yanking up any seeds, any small plants. I want those to establish themselves. If you come in here and you yanked all these little ones up here, you'd notice it. It'd be like you rototilled the whole area, and then it would ultimately start becoming more invasive plants versus any native structure. You eliminate the invasives a little bit by not just tearing up the soil. But that's really an ideological thing, and if you want to cover ground, you're better off just killing them as you can. But this we have adopted as an approach. We will cut them in half and then let them survive the winter if they can, and if they don't, we know they're done. We'll cut them down to the ground. It'll be over with. Then we'll come back, maybe cut a little bit more off of it, and see if that'll kill it, and ultimately it'll go away by doing that. However, there's some areas that you just got to cut it to the ground and be done with it. So it does work to strip them as a non-chemical. This was very effective, actually. I don't know how much time she spent in here. Cut it down once, stripped it once, and maybe again, and had 75% kill, which is pretty damn good. However, it does take a lot of time.